I'm here, as James said, wearing two hats. That as the owner of Thorntons Budgens, a supermarket up the road here, and the founder of an organisation called Heart and Business, which I will talk a little bit about. Today I've done something that I hate other people doing, which is dropping in, doing my presentation and leaving again, although I will be here tomorrow night, because I'm running an authentic leadership forum in London today, a 2-day event, so I've had to juggle things around to be here, but I will be back here tomorrow night. It's a really, Hank told me earlier, gave me a bit of a summary of what you talked about, and talking about sort of social consciousness coming into the consumer speak. But I want to step back even further than that in terms of the big picture. Because the world today is in a funny old place, and arguably it is the most challenging peacetime place we have been as a planet. And if you look around the chart here, the whole issue of climate change has been touched on so much. It's been around. The first climate change report apparently was written in 1963. That was the year I was born. And, people have been ignoring it for a long time, but it's now really top of public consciousness. Plastics, we will talk about that in a minute. Terrorism. And for me, one of the last panel talked about Sri Lanka. What happened in Sri Lanka recently touched me because our biggest community in the supermarket is the Sri Lankan community. So it's touching all of us in different ways. And then the other side, look who we're electing to represent us at the moment. And it's highly topical. There's many reasons why today is such a topical day, but President Trump flew over King's Cross where we were running our forum this morning, apparently, with his fleet of helicopters. And Nigel Farage's party, new party, 6 weeks old, leading the European elections. It's quite scary, really. And for me, there's a lot of fear in the world at the moment. And people like Trump and Farage are feeding off that fear. And sadly, many companies are run on a fear basis. There's much more stick than carrot. This kind of, don't step out of line or otherwise you're out of here. So there's a lot of fear in the world. And for me, that leads to disconnection. Because if you're really fearful, then you want to disconnect. And I certainly find myself, when it comes to climate change, sometimes wanting to disconnect. It's overwhelming. It's just too much to cope with. There's a lot of disconnection. And then that leads to lack of responsibility. Well, it's not my responsibility, it's somebody else, not to do with me. Or in businesses. Oh, it's someone else's problem. Don't worry about it. And that's a problem. And all of that is leading to very low trust in business. And the way certain businesses have behaved, corporate scandals with organizations like BP, Volkswagen, Tesco, etc., there's a very low level of trust in business. Now, in amongst all this gloom, my hero is this man here, David Attenborough. So with Blue Planet 2, which came out about 1.5 years ago, he brought plastics into the awareness of the global population overnight, just like that. Because 1.5 years ago, the issue of single-use plastic was really not on anybody's radar. And suddenly it is. And it's entirely his responsibility. In fact, I did some talks in local schools just before we launched our Plastic Free. Groups of 6 to 11-year-olds. My first question was, who'd seen Blue Planet 2? Every hand went up. Second question was, what was the message? Hands going up. Too much plastic in the ocean. What do you need to do about it? Hands go up. Use less single-use plastic. They all completely and utterly got it. And some of the images, if you haven't seen it, watch it, are quite horrific. And more recently, he's done a film for the BBC on climate change. If you haven't watched it, go onto iPlayer and watch it. And if you have kids, watch it with your kids. Now, the sound's going a bit funny here, is it? Is it just me? Imagine. No, it is going funny. Right. So, again, I believe that he is bringing this in because he's so approachable. And, you have all these people, environmentalists, nutcases, and so on, going on about it. But suddenly David Attenborough talks about it, and people, oh my God, we have to do something. This is the melting polar ice caps. This is Louisiana. Apparently 15 years ago, that land had no water on it. And now, due to oil drilling and so on, it's flooding more and more. And this is in Bangladesh, people, trying to get water. And it's the second appropriate thing, other than Trump, is today is actually World Environment Day. Did everybody know that? Yeah, it's World Environment Day. It's also One Plastic Free Day as well. So lots of reasons to be sort of hopeful, so to speak. And David Attenborough, again, very recently, this is the front page of the Independent newspaper, where he really has gone from being kind of, I'm putting this into the equation, to saying, actually, people have to do something about it. And a couple of the quotes, humankind's ability to produce this material far outstrips our ability to managing it. And it's choking rivers and seas. And they talk about we need leadership from those who are responsible for introducing plastic where it cannot be countries where it cannot be adequately managed. Now, the first impression probably is thinking, oh, he's talking about Bangladesh and India and places like that. He's not. He's talking about the UK and other places. Because only 9% of plastic in this country is recycled. More plastic in India is recycled than in the UK. So he's talking about this country, and he's talking about everybody in this audience, because you in some way or other, as am I, so all of us are responsible for single-use plastic. And we have a responsibility to do something about it. Now, I'm part of the generation, as are many people in the room, that created this problem. The younger generation really care about this, and they've got something to say. And I've got a 10-year-old who happens to be my daughter, just sharing her views with you today.
Hello, my name is Hannah, and I'm concerned about all the plastic on the planet.
Plastic's not fantastic. The planet is full of plastic. It never goes away. This is really not okay. It's in the oceans. It's in the beaches. We need to stop buying it. You can do something, but we have to work together. Stop buying single-use plastic.
Tomatoes do not need to be wrapped in plastic. Water does not need to be in plastic bottles. Crisps do not need to be in plastic bags.
You adults need to tidy up and fix this.
So that's pretty direct, pretty blunt. You adults, that's all of us. But you could think at this point I'm, a negative doom monger, but I'm not actually. This for me is one of the most exciting times to be around in the world and in business. And a bit of my background, I spent many years running a consultancy with Scott, who's sitting over here, called SRCG, working in this sector. And I've done many NACS presentations, and it's lovely when Henry invited me to come back in the US and here. And I kind of got dissatisfied. So I've spent the last 10 or 11 years figuring out what my purpose in life is. And a number of years ago, I came across a Japanese concept called Ikigai. I don't know if any of you in the room have heard about Ikigai. So it says basically, if you look at the intersection between four things: what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. If you spend your life in that center intersection of those, you will be happier, more fulfilled, live a longer life, have better sex, etc., etc., etc. And that's that sweet spot. So in my consulting days, for many years, I certainly loved it. I was good at it. I was paid a lot more than I'm paid now. But I was in this spot of satisfaction, but feeling of uselessness. And then I stopped loving it, and then I had this midlife crisis, and I went and bought 2 supermarkets. And the joke is that most men with midlife crises buy Porsches, but I bought 2 supermarkets. So, and I have been focusing and realized from my own experience that with my purpose, I have a very clear, it's a written purpose statement for me. I'm much happier and more fulfilled than I've ever been. Even though on the money side, I earn far less than I did when I was a consultant. And part of that has been the idea about heart. And I realized that after 5 years into this journey, struggling to figure out what I was supposed to be doing and why I had bought these supermarkets, I did the Steve Jobs thing of joining the dots back and realized it was about heart. As in, if we put a heart in our business, rather than just a business looking at numbers, then surely it will be more successful. And that's what I've been working on ever since. And if you look at businesses, business is no different, because business is just a collection of human beings. And actually, you saw 3 fantastic companies with a purpose sitting up here, one of whom is a B Corp. and B Corps are businesses whose objective is to maximize stakeholder value. Not shareholder value, stakeholder value. And that's very different. And there's some of the names you will all know who are B Corps, a growing movement. And Nate, I think's company was here, also talked about it. And little old Thornton Business is also a B Corporation. And it's really interesting. If you look at a study Unilever did a number of years ago, they compared the brands they have with purpose, like Dove, so they have a number of brands in their portfolio that have a purpose, and then they have a collection of brands that they collected that have no real purpose. And the return on capital employed on the purpose brands is significantly greater than the non-purpose ones. And actually what Unilever are doing is slowly selling off the non-purpose brands because they feel they don't have any purpose. And I absolutely agree with everything that was said by the panelists earlier. Businesses with purpose are more successful, more profitable, and more fun to work in. So, let's bring this back to the supermarket. And what we're doing by bringing so the supermarket is the laboratory for the Thornton Business way of doing things. And we founded Thornton Business 5 years ago to spread the message to other companies. So for the first few years, we just played in our own laboratory, but the last couple of years, we've been taking these ideas to other companies as well. And it all works on the principle of human potential. So if you can imagine a group of kids playing in a playground, 7 years old, they're running around, they're full of potential, they're full of joy, there's no restrictions, no constraints. And slowly but surely, parents, teachers, bosses say things and they shut us down. You know, we close down, parents says, oh, you big boys don't cry, shut down. A boss says to you, oh, well, Andrew, you're not at school anymore. We don't do things like that around here. Shut down, shut down, shut down. So what we're aiming to do in the supermarket and other businesses is open people back up again. And the reason for the tomatoes is this is what you see when you come into the entrance to the supermarket. Seelan, who runs this department, somewhere along the way, he picked up a message from a boss that his creativity wasn't welcome at work. It was probably a throwaway comment this boss said, forgot 10 seconds later, as in, oh, what have you done that for? It looks crap. That impacted Seelan for the rest of his life until he started doing coaching as part of the program in the store. And we do an exercise called In Flow. We get people to describe the things they really love doing and they're good at, the top sides of Ikigai. And he realized he was really creative. So his coach said to him, oh, do you bring that to work? No, I don't. So he started building these displays. Small display. Everybody said, fantastic, you got great feedback. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we joke now, eventually, we won't be selling anything other than tomatoes because he'll have taken over the whole store. And it's at the beginning of the first start. So there's a point where we say, well, you can't go any further because people won't be able to get into the shop. Now, the result of that is, first of all, we sell a whole load more tomatoes than we did. Secondly, the whole fruit and veg department has benefited. Thirdly, as a store that sells fresh food, what a great advert to say this is about fresh food. And he, as a human, has grown. He physically looks 3 centimeters taller than he did a few years ago. And he's told me how it's impacted his family, his friends, his community, how he's seen, totally transformed him as a human being. So we've been on this journey for quite some time. People used to come, CEOs, senior business leaders from food retail would come and say, yeah, all very interesting. Your sales have gone up, great, people are happier, but sort of bit of so what. And I realized what we needed to do was measure what we were doing. And I had this idea of having a heart index and measuring that. And then one day a customer of ours, extraordinary man called Lawrence Bloom, bounced into the store and said, I met someone the other day. You know that heart index thing you were talking about? He said, I met somebody who's built it. And it's called the Human Potential Model. So through that, I met 2 fascinating guys, Mark and Sujit, who, like me, had worked in the corporate world and got disillusioned. And they built a model to assess human potential. So it looks a bit like this. Don't worry, you can actually read. Normally when I put this up, you can't read the bottom part, so I've got a breakdown of it. But in simple terms, how this works, at the very top is the Thorntons Budgens. So those are the results we can measure. Sales, margin, costs, employee satisfaction. Before we start out, those are the things we looked at to measure our performance. Many bigger companies use balanced scorecards and measure the next level down, the performance metrics, the inputs, things like getting things done, customer orientation, self-leadership. But actually, if you found your score on self-leadership is going down, you don't really know why it's going down. And what's important is what's going on below the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg. And that is how, in the Thorntons Budgens, the 85 people who work in our supermarket show up every single day. And there's a direct correlation between that and sales performance at the top. So my colleague Seelan, he tapped into his relentless experimentation and play. Actually, I've got a bigger version of this in case anybody can't see it. His relentless experimentation and play. When we did this assessment, you can assess individuals, teams, the whole company. For the store, commit to a higher cause was our single biggest score. And that really heartened me because it said that everybody, to a greater or lesser degree in the supermarket, got what we were doing. That we were doing something more than just a supermarket selling stuff. And that percolates all the way through to the top. And when we did this assessment, Mark presented to the senior team of managers and supervisors. And he said to this group of things here, the organization performance metrics, he asked my team, where would they like to develop as individuals and as a group of people working in a business? And there was silence in the room. It seemed like forever, but it was probably about 15 seconds. And then simultaneously, 6 people said self-leadership. So it wasn't that Scott said it and then Henry copied him and then Frank said, yeah, that's a good idea. Simultaneously, 6 people of the group of 16 said the same thing. And from that moment, nothing has ever been the same. We've gone on this journey of self-leadership. So much so that now we don't have a store manager, we have a head coach. And Henry, you met, well, some of you have met our head coach, Daniel. And with this, we have built a manifesto for ourselves. So our purpose is we are the community supermarket that really cares about people and planet. So we've had that for 7 or 8 years. So that basically affects everything we do and how we are every minute of the day. And we do that because we genuinely believe if you put people and planet first, the profit will follow. And that business needs to be a force for good. And as the guy said earlier, it's not just altruistic, it's much better business. The returns you get from that are much greater. We do it through self-leadership, our heart sets, which I'll talk about in a minute, and the fact that 65% of our profits go back to the team. And the definition of self-leadership we use is written on the screen there. It's about becoming an expert on yourself through a commitment to honest self-reflection and the ongoing process of learning and growing from your experience. So this is what I call authentic leadership. It's about really finding out what authentically people are all about and learning. These are the heart sets we have. We don't have values, we have heart sets. I believe in myself, I am mindful, and so on. And then we have habits to bring them to life. And again, if I had more time, I'll go into them in a bit more detail. And when we put this in place and we measured another Budgens in Islington, because we had done a lot of this work before we measured it, we found that we were using 8% more potential than them, our sales were 10% higher, our length of service was 50% greater, 82% of people love working with us, and we had higher margins and lower costs. So it does actually work. Now you wonder, what's that got to do with plastic? Well, when you're in a place where you have a purpose and you have everybody lined up behind that, you can then, in my view, deliver extraordinary change. And in April of last year, yes, we saw what Ecoplaza in the Netherlands had done. They were the first retailer in the world to introduce a plastic-free aisle. And we were sort of very interested. And they worked with an organization called A Plastic Planet. So we thought, God, we could do that. Yeah, we could do that. And a bit of ego saying, well, why didn't we think of that? We should have done that first. But, we could be second. But we decided, we tracked down A Plastic Planet, and Sean at A Plastic Planet came in. And together a group of us watched the film Plastic Ocean. If you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. Please watch it. And again, if you have kids, watch it with your kids. Because they will give you a really hard time afterwards about what you're doing in your working life about plastics. At the end of the film, we all looked around and said, yeah, we have to do something about this. Because we can. And we had 3 objectives in doing this. One was we wanted to make a contribution to less plastic in the oceans. Secondly, we wanted to give our customers the opportunity to shop plastic-free if they wanted to. And thirdly, and most importantly, we want to influence other retailers, like people in this room, to show you that it wasn't as difficult as you think it is to do. We were very clear with the Plastic Planet. We said, we need you. We can't do this on our own. we need to raise funding, which they did, for a dedicated person to work alongside us. And on the 1st of September last year, we decided we were going to launch the beginning of November. That was like in 10 weeks' time, less than 10 weeks' time. And I plucked 1,500 SKUs out of the air, because that's twice what Ecoplasta had. And everybody said, you're completely bonkers. And we said, well, it doesn't matter. It's a line in the sand. Doesn't matter how many we get to, but we're going to go do it. So we launched on the 8th of November, on schedule, 28 plastic-free zones in the store. And we learned, Ecoplaza's experience was fantastic because they had a plastic-free aisle at the beginning of a store. And then they quickly realized that they had to integrate it, so they rolled it out to all their stores. But in doing that, the communication wasn't so great. So back to what Henry said earlier about shouting about it, we knew we had to plaster the place with this material. So there was no doubt in our customers' minds what we were doing. And we approached this with the Plastic Planet. We could not have done this without them. And if any of you are retailers or suppliers in this room want to go on this journey, I strongly recommend you pick up the phone to them, because they know everything about everything to do with plastic-free packaging, and everybody in the world who's doing anything on plastic-free packaging. So we looked at it from three perspectives. We looked at it from things we pack ourselves or our customers pack. So fruit and veg is a great example. We took as much stuff out of plastic into loose. This whole section is all plastic-free, and there's a little fridge at the end that's got stuff like salad bags we haven't got out of plastic yet. And right back here, the organic stuff which needs to be packed for self-scanning reasons is packed in beechwood netting instead of in plastic. Bread, we used to wrap it in plastic, now we wrap it in paper. And we had experimentation. We first did this, sales tanked, waste went up because we had too little paper initially and then we had too much paper. So it's a continuous experimentation process as we went along. The fish counter, instead of paper into a plastic bag, we now wrap it in strong wax, no plastic bag needed. The second bit then was going out looking for suppliers who actively had plastic-free packaging. And that found us, the Curiosity bacon is the best bacon in the world. I absolutely guarantee you. I have never tasted bacon like that. And I will enter into a substantial bet with anybody to produce better bacon. And it's entirely plastic-free. Cardboard and then a cellulose made from vegetables. And then finally, by organizing the store, so we brought in all the plastic-free products in 28 zones across the store. Because the thing about an aisle is customers don't shop. They don't want to buy their baked beans with their meat and so on. So every part of the store, you can go and you can do an entire plastic-free shop. We even sell plastic-free shampoo and toothpaste and et cetera, et cetera. Bleach is the one thing we haven't cracked yet. Bleach is tricky with plastic-free, but I'm sure someone will come up with a solution. We set the target of launching with 1,500 products. We actually launched, well, it says 1757. That was taken the morning of the launch, but we had to print the material the night before. And on the day of the launch, we found 50 new products that no one had realized. So we actually launched with 1,800. And the current count is 2,385. And of course, it gets more difficult. We've done the easy ones. So in fact, it sometimes goes backwards because there are products we've launched that hasn't sold. And it's not all straightforward. So this is a fantastic range of products from the Hampstead Butcher up the road. We put it into plastic-free sales tanks, waste went through the roof, so we've gone back to plastic until we come up with another solution. And I'm sure we will come up with another solution. It's just a matter of time. It becomes more difficult as you go along. So if you look at results of what we've achieved, I said we launched with more than 1,800 lines. We're now over 2,300. We're heading to 3,000. That's the next mark we want to get to. And we've made a statement that we would love to be virtually plastic-free within 3 years. But we can only do that with the help of the manufacturer organizations in this room. Because actually, and it's interesting, I'm on a panel with Julian from Coca-Cola, but it's only through the big manufacturers. We've done all the easy stuff. Because we are a mainstream supermarket. We're not a specialty store. I was in a plastic-free store in Germany last week, small, very specialist. Part of what makes us interesting is we are a mainstream supermarket. And that makes it more challenging, but also more interesting. The third point there is to me the most interesting of the whole lot. Our customers totally and entirely got this from the moment we started. So the launch was a Thursday. We'd been playing around with this since September, but we didn't say anything to anybody. So we started putting up the point of sale material on Tuesday. And customers started going, that's what's going on. That's why your bread's, that's why the cheese, and people, bing, we can see what's happening. And I have had not one single complaint or disagreement from any customer about what we're doing. And I've never, ever, ever done anything that has not generated some customer complaints. Those of you in the retail business know, no matter what you do, you'll always get complaints. We've had a few complaints because we now charge more. Paper bags are more expensive than plastic bags, sadly. We have paper bags, and there's been a couple of grumbles of the fact we now charge 15p for a bag when it used to be 10. But other than that, not a single complaint. And what the customers are saying, and the reason our sales have gone up 4%, two things. One, many customers are saying we are buying more from you, we're consciously buying more from you, A, because we want to buy plastic free, but also we want to reward you because you're doing the right thing. We want to reward businesses doing the right thing. And the second thing is new customers. And the best is a woman who emailed me who gets the bus every week for an hour each way to come shopping in our store. So I think that's quite a testimony. And what they say, customers say about other retailers' initiatives is it's all greenwash. It means nothing, it's crap, it's words I won't repeat on stage, it's too little too late. And that's a message to everybody in this room that, you can write all these decks and have all these plans to do something by 2097 and let's make everything recyclable, but there's no point because only 9% of it's recycled. So that's a kind of avoidance strategy. And Waitrose's move announced yesterday where they have got a whole section of their store in Oxford without plastic is like, that's a big move, that's a proper move, and customers will reward them for that. And they may get the 4% in the food, retail, grocery industry because it's sitting there waiting for the first person to do this. When it becomes common practice, then there won't be that benefit. Next thing, no food waste increase. It's a myth that increased food waste. It's not true. I can prove it's not true. We got global coverage, which I was really surprised how much coverage. And our third objective, we have had visits from every single major retailer and supplier in this country, and further afield even. And I put this quote up from the VP of Sobeys. They came to visit. They were very, shall we say, they didn't come off very well from a Canadian documentary, which we were featured in. And their CEO sent some of his team to come and see what we were doing. And they were extraordinary. And they are doing some amazing things. I'm not allowed to say what it is, but they've got 1,600 stores across Canada. And that change they make will make everything we've done worthwhile if no one else did anything. But lots of other people will. And then other people will hopefully copy them in North America. And we've had some fun. These are two of our local customers, Jim Broadbent, Akka, Horace Slugthorne, and Dame Janet Sussman, who's a Shakespearean actor. And that's her telling children, all the school children were outside of the launch, saying, you have to become scientists because you have to fix the mess we've made of this planet. So she's hilarious. She's well into her 80s, and she is still firing on all cylinders. So what next? We've got a deep coaching program for 22 of our self-leaders with the Human Potential Group. So these are coaches from all around Europe who are coaching our team. At Heart and Business, we're running an Authentic Leadership Forum in London today and tomorrow. There's another one in November. If you want to know more about it, I'm here tomorrow night. You can ask me. This is where we started. So we have a choice that we can make. We can live like that, or we can turn that fear into courage. We can be connected. We can take responsibility as business leaders, and we can increase that will lead to an increased trust in business. And for you, if what I've said has touched you and you are a leader, you can affect your strategy, then I encourage you to go out there and to develop a purpose for your organization. And if you're at a level where you can't influence strategy, somebody else does it, and you get this, well then leave and go and join a B Corp or some other purpose-driven organization. Because we only live once, and I certainly didn't want to go to my grave without having done something useful and lived a purpose in life. So thank you for listening. And, I've got 9 seconds left, so thank you very much.